Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll be somewhere in between the chairman of the full committee and the distinguished chairman of the subcommittee. Thank you, Director Squires, for joining us today. As head of the PTO, your job is to promote stability in the market for goods and services by protecting trademarks that are used in interstate commerce. In pursuit of the mission, the USPTO has for decades been removed from political intrigue, favoritism, and controversy. By keeping politics out, prior presidents and USPTO directors ensured that applicants had a fair and honest system to rely on. It seemed to change last year. You and President Trump injected partisan politics into the work of the PTO, from working to strip trademark examiners of any right to collective bargaining, a right that they'd enjoyed for many decades. You recently took an extraordinary and unprecedented action. Earlier this year, the USPTO itself filed trademark applications on behalf of Donald Trump's ill-defined private multi-billion-dollar global project called the Board of Peace.
What if a sitting president of the United States quietly built a billion-dollar international organization with no congressional approval, no registered legal structure, no audit system, no transparency, and no accountability, and then used a federal government agency to cover the whole thing up? What if that same president declared himself chairman for life of this organization, collected billions of dollars from some of the most authoritarian governments on earth, promised $10 billion of your taxpayer money without a single vote in Congress, and then had the audacity to trademark the word peace so that no one else could use it against him? That is not a hypothetical. That is not a conspiracy theory. That is exactly what Congressman Jamie Raskin is accusing Donald Trump of doing right now, in real time in 2026. And the deeper you dig into this story, the more alarming it gets. Welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now and turn on the notification bell, because we cover the stories that matter, the ones that go beyond the headlines and give you the full picture.
President Trump has declared himself chairman for life of this elusive entity. He's promised billions of dollars from the taxpayers to the board, although Congress has not voted a single dollar for it. And he has secured billions of dollars from mostly corrupt foreign governments, including Saudi Arabia, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, United Arab Emirates, Morocco, Bahrain, Qatar, Uzbekistan, and Kuwait. Beyond that, there's not much we know about this shadowy venture. We don't know its basic corporate structure. We don't know whether it's a registered entity anywhere in the United States or in any other country. We don't know who controls the billions of dollars in its bank accounts. We don't know what countries those bank accounts are located in. We don't know who will conduct audits and oversight of the board, if anyone. And we don't know what the president intends to do with this massive, secret, unaccountable slush fund while he's in office and after he leaves. Yet, when the Board of Peace decided it wanted to secure a trademark for its name and for its logo, a move that should have required it to identify the legal entity that actually runs it and controls its billions of dollars, you stepped in. You personally filed the trademark applications, allowing USPTO to stand in as a straw trademark holder to cover up for this slush fund that appears to put both billions of US taxpayer funds and billions in payments from foreign governments into the pocket of the chairman for life, Donald Trump, who will control it. The president set up a board that likely violates both the foreign and the domestic emoluments clauses, and now you're helping to run the operation, as far as we can tell. What's more, I'm not sure that either you or the Trump administration realize what you're confessing by filing a trademark application. You're admitting that the Board of Peace is not a legitimate governmental body, but rather a commercial enterprise set up by President Trump. Our trademark law began in 1879 when the Supreme Court struck down a trademark law that applied to any and all organizational designations. The court ruled that Congress could do so only under the Commerce Clause. So when Congress passed the Trademark Act of 1881, it was written to apply only to marks used in interstate commerce. The modern version of the Lanham Act in 1946 makes clear it only protects trademarks used in interstate commerce. Section 1052B specifically forbids the registration of any insignia of the United States or any state or municipality or any foreign nation or any other governmental body. So by filing for a trademark, you're admitting that the Board of Peace is not really a governmental entity at all. It's a purveyor of influence operating for profit with apparently $1 billion admission fee, at least that's what's been reported in the press. A money laundering scheme to pocket the billions, all made in a global shakedown in the name of peace. Now, as far as I can tell, the USPTO has just 9 trademarks. 4 are various logos for your office, some of which read USPTO, others have the full name of the agency written out, IS Patent and Trade Office. 3 more are for the phrases "Go for Real" and "You're Smart, Buy Smart," phrases that were part of a public awareness campaign that the USPTO itself ran with the National Crime Prevention Council. The other 2 are now for the mysterious Board of Peace, which has no organizational relationship, I believe, whatsoever to the USPTO. So by agreeing to act as President Trump's phone a friend and using the PTO to register a trademark on behalf of a third party, it would seem you're violating a cardinal principle of the Lanham Act, which explicitly lays out in subsection B that only, quote, a person who has a bona fide intention under circumstances showing the good faith of such person to use a trademark in commerce, who may request registration of the trademark. That's quite a problem for the agency whose role it is to administer and police the registration of trademarks and to administer disputes about them. One can only imagine this decision will get challenged, and there will be litigation over the mark that you have now claimed as your own for the PTO before your agency, which is charged with being the neutral adjudicator of disputes about trademarks. The field is crowded with existing registrations by other educational purveyors of global peace. To give a few examples I found online this morning: World Peace Table, World Peace Network, Project Peace, Peace Vision Global, Global Peace Initiative, Global Peace Foundation, International Peace Center, Peace Network, Peace Action, the Peace Trust, Greenpeace. Any one of these organizations would have a strong case to sue for cancellation of Trump's Board of Peace trademark on the grounds that it dilutes and infringes their own pre-existing trademarks for peace facilitation services. And also, of course, that this mark is not registrable at all, since it purports to identify a governmental entity and not an organization in interstate commerce. Not only would you have to decide whether Trump has a defense to prior users' opposition to his marks, you would have to rule on any offensive use of trademark law by Trump against any of the other groups. Let's say he moves to attack Greenpeace for infringement of his commercial trademark or opposes registration of any new organization that uses peace in its name. Who would adjudicate this? You would, your office. You're both the owner and you're the judge of any rights that you have as an owner against anyone who wants to identify their organization with the word peace. This is not just a disreputable use of the trademark registration process, it's the first step in giving Donald Trump and his subordinates a monopoly on use of the word peace, to make the very notion of peace unthinkable if it departs from control of the new big brother who now owns it. If President Trump can't win the Nobel Peace Prize he craves because he plunged us into an aggressive war of choice in the Middle East, now he'll just own the word peace instead. A decision like that doesn't just drag the USPTO into covering up for a slush fund that may violate both the foreign and domestic emoluments clauses. It's bad for the integrity of our trademark laws. When people lose faith in the fairness and objectivity of our system, it begins to fall apart. So I'm not just troubled that you may be violating the basic trademark rules. I'm troubled that in violating the rules to help Donald Trump, you may be acting as a political operative in a way that will destroy our neutral system for regulating source-identifying trademark rights.
Now hear what Trump is saying about Iran in his cabinet meeting, because the man who now owns a trademark on peace just launched a war.
There are some talks now. Do you have a new deadline before taking?
No, I'll announce it. I mean, right now, you're talking about a deadline for doing some pretty big damage, even bigger than we've done. We'll see. Look, we have very substantial talks going on with respect to Iran, with the right people. You know, I told you about a present, right? Steve, can I reveal the present?
You can do anything you want.
Thank you. They said to show you the fact that we're real and solid and we're there, we're going to let you have 8 boats of oil, 8 boats, 8 big boats of oil. This was 2 days ago. And they'll sail up tomorrow. That was 3 days ago. And I didn't think much about it. And then I watched the news and they said, a very good anchor, actually. Happened to be Fox. But I watched it, and he said, something's unusual happening. There are 8 boats that are going right up the middle of the Hormuz Strait. 8 big tankers are going loaded up with oil right through. And I said, well, I guess they were right, and they were real. And I think they were Pakistani flagged. And I said, well, I guess we're dealing with the right people. And actually, they then apologized for something they said, and they said, we're going to send 2 more boats. And it ended up being 10 boats. All right? I hope I haven't screwed up your negotiations, but I thought it was appropriate to say, because I did taunt you the other day by saying they're going to give us a present.
And today's story is one of the most important ones we have covered in a long time. We are talking about Trump's Board of Peace, what it is, where the money is going, who is benefiting, and why one of America's most respected constitutional scholars in Congress is calling it a secret slush fund that may be the biggest financial corruption scandal of any presidency in modern American history. Let's start at the beginning, because the story of the Board of Peace begins with a ceasefire, a war zone, and a very grand announcement. Back in September 2025, Donald Trump proposed what he called a bold new international initiative to bring peace to Gaza and stabilize the Middle East. On the surface, it sounded noble. After 2 years of devastating war that killed tens of thousands of people and left the Gaza Strip in ruins, the idea of a coordinated international reconstruction effort seemed like exactly what the world needed. Trump announced a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas in October 2025, which he immediately took credit for, and began laying the groundwork for what he would call the Board of Peace. By November 2025, the United Nations Security Council had passed Resolution 2803, which welcomed the establishment of the board as a transitional framework for Gaza's reconstruction. And then on January 15, 2026, Trump posted on Truth Social to announce that the Board of Peace had officially been formed. He called it, and I am not making this up, the greatest and most prestigious board ever assembled at any time, any place. Classic Trump. But behind that signature bombast was something much more serious than a brand new international organization. What was being quietly assembled was something that many legal experts, constitutional scholars, and now members of Congress are calling an unprecedented, unaccountable, and potentially unconstitutional private empire, built while a sitting president is still in office and funded by billions in foreign government money, all flowing to a board that only one man controls. On January 22, 2026, Trump hosted a signing ceremony for the Board of Peace founding charter at the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. Leaders and foreign ministers from 19 countries attended and signed. It was a made-for-television moment, designed to look like a historic diplomatic triumph. But the cracks were already showing. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu did not attend, citing concerns that Swiss authorities would be obligated to act on his International Criminal Court arrest warrant if he set foot in the country. And major world powers, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Brazil, Mexico, China, and Russia, either sent only observers or stayed away entirely. Brazil and Mexico publicly stated that they could not join a body that was supposed to govern Gaza's future but had zero Palestinian representation. Not a single Palestinian voice was included at the table. Think about that for a moment. A board created explicitly to oversee the reconstruction and governance of Palestinian territory, and the Palestinian people themselves have no seat, no vote, and no voice. As of today, only 25 of the 62 countries invited to join have actually signed the charter. European allies have expressed deep concern that this new body could usurp the role of the United Nations, an institution built on universal representation, international law, and multilateral accountability. Trump himself seemed to confirm those fears when he told the room at the board's inaugural meeting in Washington on February 19, 2026, that the Board of Peace would, in his words, almost be looking over the United Nations and making sure it runs properly. That is not a peace initiative. That is a power grab, dressed up in diplomatic language. Now let's talk about the money, because this is where the story goes from concerning to deeply alarming. At that February 19th inaugural meeting, Trump announced that the United States would contribute $10 billion to the Board of Peace. Member states pledged another $7 billion. That is $17 billion in total pledged at a single meeting. But here is what Trump did not tell the American people. Congress never voted on any of this. Not $1 was authorized through the standard legislative process. The Constitution of the United States is very clear. The power of the purse belongs to Congress. The president cannot unilaterally commit billions in taxpayer funds to any organization, foreign or domestic, without legislative approval. But Trump did it anyway, and he did it in front of cameras, in front of world leaders, with no apparent concern about the constitutional limits of his office. And then it got worse. Just days ago, on March 26, 2026, it was reported that the State Department had quietly reallocated $1.2 billion in existing foreign aid funding to finance the Board of Peace. Officials took $1 billion from international disaster assistance programs, $200 million from peacekeeping operations, and $50 million from international organizations. All redirected, all without congressional approval, all funneled into a board that has no registered legal structure, no audit mechanism, and no public accounting of how a single dollar has been spent. And here is the part that should make every American, Republican or Democrat, stop and pay attention. The Board of Peace has not transferred any money to Gaza. Not $1 of that $17 billion in pledges and taxpayer funds has actually reached the people it was supposedly raised to help. The people of Gaza, 77% of whom are facing acute food insecurity right now, according to the World Food Program, have seen nothing. Zero. The money exists, the board exists, but the humanitarian relief it promised does not. So where is the money? That is the question at the heart of everything Congressman Raskin is raising. And according to investigative reporting by Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, the answer is genuinely frightening. Negotiations are reportedly underway between the Trump administration and J.P. Morgan Chase to establish a private account for the Board of Peace, an account that would be accessible by the chairman, Donald Trump, and his personally hand-picked designees on the executive board. Now, on its own, using a private bank for an international organization is not unusual. But here is the problem. Trump is currently suing J.P. Morgan Chase and its CEO, Jamie Dimon, for $5 billion in a separate legal dispute. That means the same bank being asked to hold billions in Board of Peace funds is simultaneously being sued by the chairman of that board. The conflict of interest there is not subtle. And the concern that legal experts are raising goes even further. The people named on the executive board were listed in the board's founding resolution mostly without any reference to their current government title or office, which raises a deeply troubling question about whether those individuals could continue to access and withdraw from that account even after Trump leaves the presidency. Think about what that means. A private slush fund built during a presidency, potentially accessible long after that presidency is over. That is not a peace initiative. That is an exit strategy. Beyond the financial opacity, Raskin has laid out in remarkable detail who is funding this operation on the international side. Foreign governments that have contributed or pledged money to the Board of Peace under Trump's chairmanship include Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Morocco, Bahrain, Uzbekistan, and Kuwait. Let that list sink in. These are not renowned democracies committed to human rights and the rule of law. These are, in many cases, authoritarian regimes with documented records of repression, censorship, torture, and political persecution. An analysis by The Intercept found that every single member state of the Board of Peace has been rebuked for human rights violations. Every single one. And yet these are the governments pouring money into an organization chaired by the sitting president of the United States, with no congressional oversight, no ethics review, and no public accounting. The founding fathers of the United States were so worried about exactly this kind of arrangement that they wrote protections against it directly into the Constitution. Those protections are called the Emoluments Clauses, and they are central to Raskin's constitutional argument. The Foreign Emoluments Clause, found in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution, prohibits the President and other federal officials from accepting any present, payment, title, or benefit of any kind from any foreign government without the explicit consent of Congress. The Domestic Emoluments Clause in Article 2, Section 1, bars the President from receiving any financial benefit beyond his fixed salary from the United States government or any individual state. These clauses exist for one reason: to prevent foreign governments from purchasing influence over American leaders. The framers had seen what happened in European courts when ambassadors and ministers accepted lavish gifts from foreign crowns. They wanted no part of it, and so they built a hard wall into the Constitution. Now, legal scholars at the American Enterprise Institute, a conservative think tank, have argued in published analysis that Trump's arrangements in his second term represent a dangerous disregard not just of the Foreign Emoluments Clause, but of the broader constitutional principle that the presidency exists to serve the public, not to enrich the person holding the office. They have called on Congress to amend the Foreign Gifts and Decorations Act to require presidents to disclose income and benefits received from foreign state investment vehicles. Constitutional law researchers have noted that the emoluments violation here does not require a direct personal cash transfer to Trump. The structure itself, foreign governments paying to gain extended membership on a board chaired by the sitting U.S. president, who controls all decisions about membership, governance, and funding, creates precisely the kind of foreign leverage over an American official that the Constitution was designed to prevent. And that brings us to the most explosive recent development in this entire story: the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and what Congressman Raskin has called one of the most unprecedented acts of political corruption in the history of that agency. Here is what happened. At some point, the Board of Peace wanted to trademark its name and logo. Trademarks exist to protect commercial activity in interstate commerce. Under the Lanham Act, the foundational federal trademark statute, a trademark can only be registered by the legal entity that owns and uses it in commerce. So, when the Board of Peace wanted a trademark, the normal process would have required it to identify the legal entity behind the board, its registered corporate structure, its address, its ownership. But here's the problem. The Board of Peace has no registered corporate structure. It has no known legal entity anywhere in the United States. It cannot identify who legally owns it, because the answer to that question would reveal the very financial and legal arrangements that Raskin says the administration is trying to hide. So rather than answer those questions, someone made an extraordinary decision. On January 21, 2026, USPTO Director John Squires personally filed 2 trademark applications, one for the Board of Peace name and one for its logo, listing himself as the owner. He also waived the standard $350 filing fee, with his own office approving that waiver the very next day. A federal government agency whose entire purpose is to serve as a neutral referee of commercial intellectual property rights had been turned into a legal shield for a presidential pet project. On March 18, 2026, Raskin sent a blistering letter to Director Squires demanding a full accounting. Then, on March 25, 2026, just 3 days ago, Raskin confronted Squires directly at a House Judiciary Subcommittee hearing on the oversight of the USPTO. The exchange was extraordinary. Raskin laid out his legal argument with precision. Under the Lanham Act, Section 1052B specifically forbids the registration of any insignia of the United States government or of any state, municipality, or foreign nation. The law is clear. Government entities cannot hold commercial trademarks because trademarks are by definition marks used in interstate commerce by private entities. So by filing a trademark application for the Board of Peace, the USPTO was making a legal admission, whether it intended to or not, that the Board of Peace is not a legitimate government body. It is a commercial enterprise. And if it is a commercial enterprise operating under the direction of the President of the United States, funded by foreign governments, with no congressional authorization and no public accountability, then it is potentially a money laundering operation disguised as a diplomatic initiative. Squires defended himself by saying the trademark was filed to protect the Board of Peace from cyber squatters, noting that within minutes of the board's announcement, bad actors had already grabbed its domain name online. He told the committee the trademark would be transferred to the board once it is formally structured. But Raskin was not satisfied, and for good reason. Squires listed himself as the owner on the application. That means he is simultaneously the representative of the Board of Peace and the director of the agency that would adjudicate any trademark dispute involving the Board of Peace. He is the plaintiff, the defendant's counsel, and the judge, all at the same time. No one in the history of the USPTO has ever done this. There is no precedent for it, and Raskin made clear that this conflict of interest goes far beyond a bureaucratic irregularity. It is, in his words, the act of a political operative, someone who has chosen loyalty to the president over the integrity of the institution they were appointed to protect. But the concern that Raskin raised in his hearing that has perhaps received the least attention, and deserves the most, is what happens next with this trademark if it is approved. The field of international peace-related organizations is enormous. There are dozens of established nonprofits, advocacy groups, and civil society organizations operating under names that include the word peace, World Peace Table, World Peace Network, Project Peace, Peace Vision Global, Universal Peace Plan, Global Peace Foundation, Universal Peace Federation, International Peace Center, Peace House, Peace Network, Peace Action, Global Alliance for Peace, the Peace Trust, and Greenpeace, among many others. If the Board of Peace trademark is approved as a commercial mark covering peace-building services and international peace facilitation, Trump's legal team would be empowered to sue any organization it views as infringing. It could oppose any new organization from registering a name with the word peace in it. It could potentially demand that established organizations rebrand or shut down entirely. Raskin put it directly. This is the first step toward giving one man a legal monopoly on the concept of peace in America. And the judge deciding those future cases, John Squires, the same person who filed the trademark in the first place. As Raskin said, war will be peace because the president will own the word. This warning is not abstract. Greenpeace, one of the most recognizable and long-standing peace and environmental organizations in the world, is currently fighting for its financial survival. In February 2026, a North Dakota court entered a $345 million judgment against Greenpeace organizations following a lawsuit by Energy Transfer, the oil corporation behind the Dakota Access Pipeline, over Greenpeace's support for the Standing Rock protests. Greenpeace has called the lawsuit a SLAPP suit, a strategic legal action designed to silence and financially drain advocacy organizations. The organization is appealing the judgment, but the point stands. In today's legal environment, a well-funded adversary with access to government resources can use litigation as a weapon to destroy organizations it does not like. A trademark on the word peace, held by a sitting president's personal initiative, could become exactly that kind of weapon. Now, to be fair, the Trump administration has disputed all of this. A White House official said that Raskin's allegations are false and that the trademark applications were filed solely to prevent imposters and bad actors from misusing the Board of Peace brand. They pointed to the board's public charter and its inaugural meeting as evidence of transparency. But critics, legal scholars, and constitutional experts have not been reassured. The Carnegie Endowment for International Peace published a detailed analysis concluding that the board lacks the oversight, auditing mechanisms, and conflict of interest rules necessary for an organization handling billions in international funds. The charter, despite claiming to uphold principles of financial integrity and transparency, does not actually set out any mechanism for enforcing those principles. And Trump has still not published the board's official resolutions on its website, as promised. Meanwhile, Democratic Senator Catherine Cortez Masto has introduced legislation that would take $1 billion of Board of Peace funding and redirect it to the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program to help American families facing skyrocketing energy costs driven by Trump's expanding military conflict with Iran, noting that rather than funding a billion-dollar initiative with no transparency, the money should help people who are struggling right now. Because here is the other layer of this story that cannot be ignored. The Board of Peace was sold to the world as a peace initiative. But the United States is currently at war. Trump and Israel launched widespread airstrikes against Iran in late February 2026, plunging the Middle East into a regional conflict that has been expanding ever since. The inaugural meeting of the Board of Peace on February 19th, the same gathering where Trump pledged $10 billion and called it the most prestigious board ever assembled, came just days before those strikes began. Indonesia, one of the founding member states, has since paused its engagement with the Board of Peace as domestic pressure to withdraw intensified following the American and Israeli attacks on Iran. Gulf donor states that had pledged billions in funding are now reportedly souring on the whole enterprise, questioning Trump's decision to launch a new war in a region he claimed to be bringing to peace. According to Reuters, only a small fraction of the $7 billion pledged by member states has actually been delivered. The money, like the peace itself, appears to be more performance than reality. And yet the name branding continues. The trademark applications are still pending. The USPTO has still not transferred the marks to any legal entity. The board still has no registered corporate structure. The $10 billion in taxpayer commitments has still not been voted on by Congress. The $1.2 billion redirected from disaster relief and peacekeeping has still not been accounted for, and not a single dollar has reached Gaza. What Congressman Raskin is raising is not a partisan attack. It is a constitutional alarm. It is a warning that the guardrails built into the American system of government, the separation of powers, the congressional power of the purse, the Emoluments Clauses, the independence of federal agencies, are being systematically dismantled, one executive action at a time. And the Board of Peace may be the most audacious example yet of a president using the language of diplomacy to build a private financial empire insulated from oversight, inaccessible to Congress, and funded by the very foreign governments the Constitution explicitly prohibits from having financial relationships with a sitting president. This story is still developing. There will be more hearings, more disclosures, and more revelations in the weeks ahead. And we will be here to cover every single one of them with the depth, the context, and the clarity that this story demands. Because what is at stake is not just one organization or one president. What is at stake is whether the rule of law and constitutional accountability still mean anything in the United States of America. If you made it this far, we genuinely appreciate you. This kind of in-depth journalism takes time, research, and dedication, and it only happens because of viewers like you who care enough to watch, share, and engage. If you found this video informative and important, please give it a thumbs up right now. It takes 1 second and it helps more people find this content. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this story because awareness is the first step toward accountability. And if you are not already subscribed to this channel, now is the time. We cover the political stories that demand your attention, broken down clearly, thoroughly, and without the noise. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and join our growing community of people who believe that an informed public is the strongest defense democracy has. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the Board of Peace is a legitimate diplomatic initiative, or is Raskin right to call it an unsupervised international slush fund? We want to hear from you. We read every comment, and we will see you in the next one.